Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Vixen Voice. Today we are talking all things abundance. And I don't know if you see my painting and these lovely lady shirts, I think pink has something to do with abundance. So let's talk about feminine abundance today. We're going to have fun. So I'm excited about our show today. You know, I'm excited about every show. I know you hear it every time. But today we have Megan Munsell. She is the founder of Abundantia Advisory. She's a CPA and a fractional CFO. I love that because now we have fractional CFOs and we have amazing brains like Megan who we can bring into our business before it's big enough to pay for a full-time CFO. So I really love this fractional thing going on in the C-suite. So excited to jump into that today. So Megan and I were on a panel together talking about money mindset. That's how we met. We had breakfast ahead of time, became friends, and she's now a client and I'm a client of hers. So it's kind of funny how these things work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so awesome. I love it. So you're going to see what's so awesome about Megan is we actually met in the spiritual community. So both of us are very deeply spiritual. But she's so darn smart and just down to earth and loves to help us women get a handle on our numbers. So you're going to hear that today. And then I have Karen Garner, which I'm so excited. So Karen's not officially a member of my family, but she's darn close. You know, my niece and my brother have been on. So Karen is a fiduciary financial advisor with Roberts Wealth Management. So as you may or may not know, if you've heard before, that was my firm, my brother's firm as well. And he has merged them together and is running both so that I can do this and be here with all of you. So anyway, I've known Karen for years. She's an amazing financial advisor. She helps her clients retire. She helps them have an abundant mindset in retirement. And again, what I love about Karen is she's so darn smart, but you can go to lunch, have a glass of wine with her, and you're going to have a great time. So Karen, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, April. It's a joy to be here.
This is so fun. I love that I get to talk to you here. So Karen and I are on a meeting together every Monday with the financial advisors. I still help just like give my 2 cents here and there, but Karen and two of the other advisors have really taken over leading the other advisors. And Karen, that's one thing I love about you. Like, you have such a great servant's heart, not just to your clients, but to your fellow team and advisors. So I love that. And today I want to talk because I have a feeling it has to do with your abundance mentality, but we'll kind of dig into that later. So awesome. So welcome, ladies. Glad to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Megan, we're going to start with you. So your first time on the Vixen Voice, I like to ask a question because no one tells your story better than you. And I'm going to warn you, as you tell your story, I'm probably going to ask you more questions because we all gloss over the important parts of our story, right? So I'm going to turn into a listener and hopefully ask questions that our audience would have. But Megan, if you don't mind, just start out, and then Karen, you're up next. So be thinking about it.
Right.
What is a pivotal moment? You know, you're obviously this powerhouse woman. You've left corporate, started your own business. You're helping other women do the same, right? But as we know, we've all evolved and grown into who we are today. So what is a pivotal story you can think about in your life that really helped to make you the woman you are today?
Thank you, April. So I grew up, my mother was actually an entrepreneur. She made different home decor items and she did wholesaling of those items. And the really sad thing is this was the 80s and 90s. You didn't have things like QuickBooks. You didn't really have access to a lot of financial advice as a woman, and you weren't taken very seriously. Her business was incredibly successful, but I remember going to the CPA every year to get the taxes done. She would cry the week leading up to it, and then the CPA would tell her, your little crafting business is doing so well. And she was making more money than my father was, who was a skilled tradesman. So just seeing that growing up, seeing the pain she went through, seeing the impact on my family, I really wanted to help. And then after September 11th, most of her sales were on the East Coast and her orders were canceled, and she just closed up shop. And had she had the things that were available today, she would have had intellectual property rights. She would have probably been manufacturing outsourced instead of in our barn, and things would look very differently. And so if I can help just one woman avoid working hard to have nothing to show for it at the end, then my purpose in life has been fulfilled.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And, you know, when we look back at the women in our lives, our mothers, our grandmothers, I had a great aunt that made a great impression on me. And I think to my grandmother all the time. And a lot of people thought she was a difficult woman. And by the way, I look very much like her. She was Croatian and my looks are Croatian. Most people don't understand. But anyway, she wasn't difficult. She was just born before her time. She should have been running a darn company like I do, right? And she didn't have that opportunity. You know, she was the wife. My grandfather had multiple businesses. And so she would go in there and, you know, really be running the show and get a lot of flack from the employees because she was the wife. And so I just think that's, you know, sharing that story. I hate to hear what your mom went through, but I think it's great that it's leading you to help other women. And I think it's so great for us to take a moment and pause and be grateful for the opportunities we have, even though it doesn't feel like that every day, right? And just that we're able to express ourselves authentically how we are, because things have really changed. So I love that story. Thank you so much.
Drastically.
And I had a great grandmother who read tea leaves and just was the wildest woman you would have ever met. She was before her time as well. And so she passed when I was a very young child, probably before I was 12. But she impacted me as well, just seeing her wild spirit and how even when people told her, like, we don't do that, Ernestine, she still did it anyway. So I'm a little bit of Ernestine and Sherry mixed up into one.
I love it. We'll pay our homage. So Karen, how about you? What's a pivotal story that you can think of that helped, you know, create the woman sitting here with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm loving this conversation and just hearing both of you. We have very similar, women that were in our lives. My grandmother started way before her time. She had a small business. She had a dress shop. But when I would go visit, she was always looking, right? Remember the day when you'd look at stocks in the newspaper? And I can always remember she was always looking at Texas Instruments, and so she taught me. That's how I really started really getting my love of just kind of stock, the market and stuff, but then just really seeing her and before her time too. My grandfather was a barber. And just, I had wonderful, grandparents that definitely led me in the right direction. But my grandmother, just strong woman, before her time. Then my mother was too, because she also was involved in the shops. And so it just kind of those were my, mentors. And in my household, you were going to be a strong woman. That's just the way it was. So I think definitely they molded me. And then, prior to my career in finances, I did, and then Megan, hearing so I did work in Washington, D.C. and government and politics. And so I had the opportunity to work for President Bush and be in the White House. And so I was there on 9/11. So hearing your story and how it impacted your mother financially. And a lot of people didn't, understand those impacts and those stories. But I connected with you when I was hearing that story. But I did work, though, that allowed me the opportunity to work with Wall Street. So, right, hits Wall Street. So the task of that time period was, how are we going to still keep the economy going, our markets going, and at the same time, hello, what are we facing? We just had this horrible, attack. So those are, really the big, obviously my mother, 100%, my grandmother. And then, as far as a big pivotal moment in my life, it would be definitely September 11th. And just really understanding. I think that's the first time I understood evil. I thought I did, but it wasn't really until that moment in my life just drastically changed.
I love it. Thank you, Karen. So let's fast forward to today. To give context to our listeners, can you just share a little bit about what you do today? I know, Megan, you recently just had a big change in your life. So I'd love to talk about that and the courage it took. And Karen, you went from the White House to working at a big brokerage firm to now a boutique wealth management. So I'd love to hear that. And if you could weave in maybe how you help to maintain abundant mentality through these changes, or maybe how your desire for abundance drove that journey, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I do as a fractional CFO for smaller businesses, $5 million in revenue and below, a lot of times business owners will see the profit and loss statement that they print out of QuickBooks or whatever their accounting services are, and they think that that should match their bank balance. And so they don't have really a good control of their cash flow. And as you know, as a financial professional, that cash means more than your profit. And so I'm really helping them understand where their cash is coming from and where it's going so that they can make decisions that really increase the value of their business and really build sellable, scalable businesses that can set them up for the future. So that's what I do as a fractional CFO. My 20-year career in corporate, I was saving Fortune 50s and other publicly traded companies millions of dollars per year, begging for pennies. And recently, after I did April's Money Mindset Challenge, I realized that a lot of my energy was getting soaked up into this job where I didn't know what was going to happen next. I was not sleeping at night. I was worried about my team. And so I just put my trust in the fall and I quit the job. I do have clientele lined up. So it's not like I still made a decision like I would advise my clients to make based in data, not just gut feelings and intuition. But I could see where I was holding myself back and I was doing future clients a disservice by not holding that space for them.
Yeah, I love that because, even though you do have clients, sometimes the security of that nice paycheck keeps us in a position that we really have outgrown or we're not serving people anymore. And I hear that a lot. I was a guest on another podcast this morning and it's called the Unstuck Podcast. And it talks about helping women, get unstuck from these positions. And I love that, you shared you had a catalyst to kind of push you out of that because a lot of times we do, that's where advisors and consultants and coaches or whoever you depend on can help because sometimes they help us to see things from a different perspective because, when you have your side hustle growing a business and you have a corporate job as, chief revenue officer, there's not much time in the day to plan things out, right? Often you can't see the forest for the trees. So
yes, and you can't do either job at 100% if your attention is split. So, my role as the director
Absolutely.
versus my role as the CFO for my clients. What do I want to be doing long term? It's the client work. So something had to go, and that's what had to go.
well, that's a
Yeah, and
smart self.
yeah.
No, go ahead, Karen.
No, go ahead, April. No, go ahead.
It's just a smart
Well, divine.
self-realization. When I started in the financial industry in 2008, I don't think this is common anymore. Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of CPAs had gotten their securities license and they were doing both jobs. And I was just like, I
Right.
think my dad started out that way, but then he realized, okay, I can't do both. I'm going this
Don't
way,
do that.
right? But a lot of people were like, oh, my CPA. I'm like, it's two different jobs. Like, how are they doing either one
Completely.
well? It didn't make sense to me that someone was trying to wear all the hats. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think it's just greed, or maybe thinking you're smarter than everyone else. Because, I think it's really important, even like, in the coaching field, like I'm a business consultant because I've been there, done that. So I can actually help you structure things, but I also can coach you to find the answer, right? But I am not a therapist and I am not XYZ. So, we should be smart enough to refer our clients out when it's beyond what we can help them with. So I love, Megan, that you had that realization that you couldn't show up for everyone in the right way. And I think that's a hard decision to make. I mean, it is hard to leave your cushy job and jump out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I do with my clients work with people like Karen. I
Yeah.
don't do physically all the work, but they're hiring me to oversee. It's kind of like if you look at a big corporation, the CEO isn't running around asking the tax department what's going on, asking back end support what's going on, asking the retirement advisor what's going on. No, they just need one point of contact that's overseeing everything. And so bringing that into the roles as well.
I love it. So, Karen, talk to us about your trajectory. So, we got the short version, White House to Wall Street to fiduciary advisor, but tell us your story.
Yeah. So, yeah, and you were talking about abundance, and I would say maybe, in my younger years and going, I was definitely uh, motivated and aggressive. At 27, I got to be actually present to the President of the United States, in the Oval Office. That's a pretty amazing thing to be able to say you did. And I was 27. So it's kind of like, okay, now what? But then, like I was saying, after 9/11, that definitely changed. But I think it was about, about career and about money and really, like I said, after 9/11, and then having that service, I do have a service heart. I think that's something that my family did instill in me. And even when I was going after, right, the title and the money and the career, I did do some lobbying even afterwards. I did the service, but then I did go into lobbying. Great money at a young age, fantastic. But it wasn't, again, the abundance was really, you need abundance. It's not just money. And that's what I learned by
Yes.
being a lobbyist. I was doing more for the corporations. I went up to DC to serve, and I loved doing that work. And so big eyes, okay, the dollars and the money I'm going to make and all of that. Well, I went to do it and I was unhappy. I was unhappy with all of the title of the top lobbying firm in Washington, D.C., this young girl, from Mississippi, from South Mississippi. And so I think, it's so important in what you're talking about the abundance. I think that has just shifted, and it's so critical for women. I'm, all for us, we're trailblazers. I can tell we all have kind of similar, even what you're talking about, but at the same time that we're actually taking care of ourselves and really finding where we want to be. Because I think you can be successful and have abundance in all areas. And so that's, I ended up kind of sneaking home. I was able to convince the lobbying firm, Katrina hits your hometown. I have this experience, again, service of heart. So I came here at home, and that's what really brought me home. But I love just the slower pace. Obviously, it's not slow at Robert's Wealth, as
No,
April
never
knows.
a boring day.
But right, never a boring day. But nobody's asking me of my title, around here. Nobody cares, necessarily where I work or how much I make, and it's just real. And I love the individual, and that I changed careers at the age of 40, so I understand, right? It's okay. Lobbying wasn't making me happy, so I thought, well, maybe I'll get into finance. Which was the right move, but not the right place. because I did land in the corporate world, as you were saying, and what you were talking about with the accountant and what you were talking about, Megan, too, in your journey, you cannot, in the current world of investing and advising, you cannot be all things. You cannot be an accountant. You cannot be the investment advisor you need to be. You can't be the estate attorney, right? You can't, it's just so many things now that individuals need and women need to really plan for retirement and really, have that freedom. What finances and folks, I used to do a seminar, April, and that was, healthy, wealthy, and wise, right?
Yeah.
You really have to have, health to have, wealth, because you got to work, you got to make it, but really also in order to have really build wealth, to have that good health, not just your physical, but your mental as well. And so that's really what drives me and what I really want to, help our clients that come in here. I was leaving the industry because of what we were just talking about, April. And I think you know that story. And I did not think a firm like Robert's Wealth existed. I just thought if it was an independent firm, it was going to be that kind of accounting firm that was kind of selling maybe some mutual funds or investments on the side. And so, like you, I actually decided, honey, I don't like where this industry is going. I do not feel like I'm able to serve my clients. I feel like I'm serving the executives and the corporates and the banks, and they're wanting me to sell checking accounts and what's going on. So, honey, are you okay? I think I'm just gonna be home for a while. Well, his mouth dropped, but I had that support. And little did I know that Roberts existed, and one of his best friends, and I of course knew the family, but one of his best friends works here, and he said, before you just give your career up and your license, I want you to go meet Paul Roberts. And I walked in. Maybe a couple weeks later, I met with Paul, and we just clicked, and it is home. I'm full of gratitude. That's definitely the new word, right? I've been walking around using, I told my husband, I had a conversation with him a couple of weekends ago. We were sitting at the dinner table, and I was like, I feel for the first time in a long time, I just feel where I'm supposed to be in all areas, even with our day-to-day challenges. I feel joy. I feel gratitude. And I have this little sticky. It says, I'm a follower of Jesus. That just came to me, right?
Yeah.
A couple of, I've been doing the Hallow app, right? And just getting back really, and just truly being a follower of Jesus, but still being able just to shine and grow and help our individuals, not just women, but obviously all of our clients.
So today I actually did day 3 of my 3-day abundance mentality challenge that I do monthly. And so we were wrapping up, and we were actually talking about how abundance gives you choices, right? It gives you choices of how you live your life, how you show up, what you do. And Karen, what I've witnessed with you the last few years that I've known you is I've seen you, I mean, obviously you're great at what you do, but I've seen you really blossom in your role. Like I said, now you're like leading the advisors, coaching them. And I know financially you're doing much better than you were at the corporate
Yes.
place, right? We won't get into detail,
Yes.
but there is an element
Yeah.
to you having that financial abundance that gives you the freedom to show up and serve. Does that make sense? And Megan, do
Exactly.
you feel that as
100%.
well? Yeah. I love it. So, Megan, how about you? Let's wrap in. I love that Karen went into what abundance is for her. And that's why I've switched to the name abundance mindset over money mindset, because it's not just about money, but it's all the good things having the money brings into your life, right? Because yes, you can grind yourself to death and make a ton of money and be miserable, right? Or you can be living a full, abundant life and also getting a nice paycheck, right? So, Megan, what
Right.
does abundance mean to you?
Abundance really just means freedom. And so many times my clients, they want money, they want to increase their profits, but what they're really saying is they want security or freedom. So they either fall into one of two camps. They either want additional capital so that they can grow because they really just want to expand. They want to go really lean into the abundance and the expansion. And then there are clients who want to build a practice or a small business around the ability to travel or be with children at home, but still have a quality lifestyle where they're not having to clip coupons and really oversee their budgets like line by line and worry about being able to afford certain things. So whatever their goal is, abundance really encapsulates both sides instead of just focusing. I think that bro finance and a lot of the social media stuff really focuses on that expansion and growth and more is more,
And
where
hustle.
I leave space for the client.
Yeah.
The hustle and grind. And I leave space for my clients to say, I want to work 20 hours a week and make $250,000 a year and stay at home with my kids. How can I do that? So the plan would look very different than somebody who wants to just expand. So I leave space for that. And I don't, my role is to serve and to help them meet their goal, not tell them what their goal should be.
Yeah. Well, I love that because Karen, you and I talked about, I know I talked to Paul about you doing this with me, doing some events for female financial advisors, because here's what's crazy. Women make up 30% of the financial advisory business today. They made up 30% 12 years ago. Well, I guarantee that there are not new women not coming into the business. What's happening is like Karen, where she was disgruntled having to be in her masculine energy all the time and play by the base rules. And then she's like, you know what? Screw this. I don't have to be here. I mean,
I'm out of here.
you know, or women are choosing to be home with their kids or take care of their parents. And it drives me mad because the financial advisory business is appointment based. So if you had your own independent firm, you're available to clients from 9 to 2. You take the kids to school and you pick them up if that's what you want to do, right? Or you make other arrangements. And that's what I love what you're doing with your clients, Megan, is you're giving them permission to design their business so that it can fit their lifestyle. And, you know, I forgot to mention this earlier. You said cash flow. Cash flow is the number one stressor for any business owner. I don't care if it's $1 billion business or a six-figure business or a $50,000 business. Like, it is the number one stressor. I have a friend who, she and her husband's company is about to cross $1 billion, and I was having lunch with her, and she said, when we first got married, she was like a very high-level pharmaceutical rep making lots of money, and he said, hey, come in, I'm going to give you this part of the company. She said 6 months in, I tried to give it back to him. And I was like, what? And she was like, I did not understand cash flow, and it drove me nuts. And like, I felt guilty all the time, and I felt like I was doing something wrong. I mean, this is a very high performing woman who's now helping lead $1 billion company. And 6 months in, she was like, no, thank you. So, I mean, the cash flow stress is real.
Yeah, 82% of businesses that fail due to inadequate cash flow. That's like a touted statistic that's out there. And this is seen in businesses of all sizes. I've been with large companies working in-house where, you know, they're not managing their cash flow effectively, and the cascading impact is very, very big. So really managing that cash flow, understanding not only the timing of your contracts, the other hurdle that I have with a lot of clients, especially social media managers, influencers, et cetera, that are in that space. There's a lot of advertising that's somewhat predatory. They talk about, I made 6 figures this month. Well, what they're usually talking about are closed contracts. And so if you've never been in the world of finance or accounting, you think, oh, they're bringing in $100,000 a year, where really they could only be bringing in $8,000 a month because they're bringing it in on a monthly retainer. So understanding the timing of contractual payments is something that I really have to educate a lot of my clients around. And once they understand that, they get a little bit mad at some of the predatory marketing that's out there on social media.
Yeah, and not just that, but the distance. So I had a client who was in my 12-week intensive in the fall, and she doubled her revenue during that time. And one of the biggest things I helped her with, she did not want to look at her bank account. And I was like, okay, you're going to have to get over this. Like, she had some serious trauma around money. Like, it was all family. I was like, look, for the next week, first thing after you have your coffee and have your like woo-saw time, you're going to go look at your bank account every morning. Like, I made her rip the Band-Aid off. And then our next step was like, okay, she was a realtor. Between when you list a house and you get paid, what's your average time? And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, I need to know how much time between when you get a client and you actually get paid, right? Because you're thinking, I need X number of clients to make this much money. But like, what happens if it takes 6 months versus 3 months to get your money, right? Like, there's a problem. And so it's really interesting. And just like, I mean, literally just starting within 12 weeks, she doubled her revenue from the previous 3 quarters just because I forced her to face her money and like start understanding basic concepts, by no means what you do, Megan. And I just think it's so important. And then it's funny because it's something you're resistant to, or many women are. I'd say 8 out of 10 that I talk to. That's just from my conversations with women. It's not an official statistic. But then once they get control of it, they feel like such a badass. Like, it gives you confidence and empowerment, which I think is part of abundance, right?
100%.
Yes, and a lot of the women business owners that come to me don't want to be mansplained. So they want to be able to ask questions. My rules are stop apologizing. And no question is dumb. Like, this is an open book here. I promise you, somewhere there's a man doing a lot worse than you. So, and
you give them the space in order to feel that comfort, right? And to be
correct.
Exactly.
Especially around the IRS and stuff too. There's a lot of fear there that I have to help them unwind. But, yeah.
It is. I mean, money. It is. It's such a personal. It's such an emotional, subject. And so what we deal with, and Megan, it sounds like we're all kind of hearing the same thing. It's you got to have that trust and build that.
Yes.
Give them that space, right, to actually feel like okay, and to really talk about it, so they can even start addressing it.
Correct.
I joke sometimes I'm a financial therapist more than anything, usually, right?
100%. That's why I'm like, this is easy for me to help women with abundance mentality. I did it for 15 years with people retiring. They walk in scared to death that they're going to run out of money. And that is the first thing we do, empower them to spend their money. I used to be like, I don't put my clients on a budget. I'm empowering them to spend their hard-earned savings, right? Because there's so much fear that once they have a plan in place and they see, which I mean, what Karen does is cash flow management. It's cash flow management of paying themselves, right? I mean, that is the most important part of retirement planning. And everyone wants to be like, what stocks do you own? And what this? They want to talk about all the sexy stuff. It's the boring cash flow that tells you if you're going to have a successful retirement or not. Same thing with business.
And give them their permission, right?
Yeah.
You see guilt. Yeah, I see a lot of women, for some reason are almost having the guilt of actually spending, and enjoying, or maybe, and absolutely, we're here to make sure that you have Not, women are living you'll know the exact number, April, but well into their 90s now, right? Well, when you're planning for retirement, you better have that income and that cash flow that's going to last,
Yep.
throughout, because we don't just want to get by, right? We want to have an abundance life.
Well, and even if you're in, a relationship where your husband's in charge of the money, women outlive men an average of 7 years.
Years, exactly. And that
So,
was, you were talking about some of the events. That's one of the things that stood out to me when I was younger. I had it was a good guy friend. His father passed away, and who handled everything, and his mother had no idea how to write a checkbook. I was in high school, but that was
yep.
seared into my brain. And I was like, that will never happen to me. And because I had the women behind it, but that's another, I would say that's always been in the back of my mind. And I think how important women need to be educated, right? Even if
Well,
their husbands are the caretaker or the
let's
breadwinner.
dig into this, some more tips like that, Karen. So, what are some tips you would give our audience, anyone listening? Like, how do you help your clients foster a more abundant mentality when it comes to money and life? So, if you were advising someone listening, what would be some practical tips you could give?
Well, first, I would say that the question I like to ask first, you got to know what your purpose is, right? What is your
Yes.
goal? What is your purpose? And I love that question, because then it really gets people thinking a little bit. Well, why am I going to work every day? What is the purpose of me and my money? And then start really, we got to step back, and understand first what your purpose and what your goals are first. And then obviously we need to, it's still stunning to me. It's just simple. Have a budget. Please have your earbud just dropped out. Please have a
No
budget
worries.
of, let's just start right there. And then we can kind of, build. That kind of surprises me a little bit too. Obviously, you younger women that are listening, please start, you know, saving for retirement and planning for retirement as soon as possible, as soon as you can. If you get the opportunity to at a work and they're matching, at least put into your 401k up to the matching. But definitely start, planning. Don't think you can't start, even if it's a little bit. You could not do a Starbucks, every day,
Oh
maybe
my
every other
gosh.
day, but you can put a little bit away.
So I
Um,
don't do Starbucks,
in
but when I was
addition.
in Mississippi for Thanksgiving, Joplin wanted to go. She was like, "Oh, can you pick Brendan and me up this?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll get one too." Three freaking coffees, $24. I was like, "When the heck
It's
did this happen?
unbelievable.
Like, this is insane." This
It's
is why.
insane.
Actually, the funny thing you say that, because when I first moved to Houston and I was building Roberts Wealth Management there, like on my own, right? And I was commuting to work, and I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I got to understand where my money's going, because I was funding the business and funding my personal life. So I would literally print my bank statements. I had four highlighter colors. One was like, necessary expenses, business related, like discretionary, and
Hmm.
one was like, what the heck am I spending this money for? And I saw, even back then, because I would grab a coffee or stop and get a snack on the way to work because I was commuting, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I drink black coffee. I can make a mug of coffee and bring it in the car with me, right? Like, why am I paying $2 for this? And it was
Yes.
crazy, just by being aware of where I was unconsciously spending money helped me.
Hmm.
And it's not like anyone told me I couldn't buy the Starbucks if I didn't want it, but I understood that my money would better serve me somewhere else. But
Hmm.
like you said, so many
Be
people
aware.
don't even, they're not aware of that unconscious spending. And
Mm-mm.
I'm sure you see that in businesses all the time, Megan.
Yeah, and one of
Yeah.
my big concerns, I would say, is the swiping mentality. We
Yeah.
are my husband. We have snowball stands, actually, like in stadiums and at different areas, events. It's unbelievable. I swear we could charge $10 for a snow cone, for a
No
small
one
one,
pays
because the
attention.
people are just, nobody is paying attention. And so that's concerning me definitely for the next generation coming through. At least we used to write in our checkbooks, you knew where the money was going. But there's a big concern for
Or have
sure.
cash. So, Megan, what do
Yeah.
you see with your clients, or what are some tips you can give?
So I like to stay away from, especially with the population that's coming to me and trusting me to help them build their business, away from becoming the authority figure in their life. The last thing I want is a client asking me what they can buy, unless it's this large investment. Does this financially make sense? So what I like to tell them for their personal budget is set up your budget proactively based on your value system.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I like my loaded tea in the morning, and I tell them, look, I have multiple degrees. I'm a distinguished accountant, and I spend $300 a month on my loaded teas from my local tea spot. And you're going to have to pry them out of my cold dead hands. So if it's that important to you
Yeah.
and you can afford it, then make sure that your budget is set up so that you're not resentful that you don't have that tea. But I stopped going to Starbucks because I realized that I didn't enjoy it. I liked it, okay, but it wasn't something where it brought me a little bit of rage if I thought somebody took it away from me. So if it's important to them, like, set up your budget around that and cut out the things that you couldn't care less about. And that's different for every person.
But also be
Again, it goes
aware
back
of
to
it.
that purpose.
Yeah, and look, I don't love budgets too much because I think it ventures into scarcity territory. So especially if you're trying to grow a business, you want to be careful, but be aware of it and be honest to yourself.
Correct.
Know the facts. Don't say, "Oh,
Exactly.
I go get my loaded teas a couple of times." Be like, "Okay, I love my loaded teas, and they cost me $300 a month. Cool. Next, right? Like,
Yeah, if I decide I want to hire a VA with that $300, then I'll drop it because I have that data. I have the data to say, see, I know exactly how much I'm spending. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm making a data-driven instead of an emotional decision.
I like how
I
you
love-
said that too, April, about it's not a budget to like restrict, it's be aware.
Correct.
It's about being aware. And then, and like you said, definitely build in that tea, that loaded tea. I'm gonna have to go try one now. I keep hearing about them. I'm gonna have to try it. But
Yeah.
now I'm curious. But absolutely, we got to enjoy life as well and enjoy the money that us women are working so hard and have really probably gone through a lot to get where we are. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then
I
locally, it also supports a woman-owned business. So
Yes.
I know that if I stop, at the end of the year, I'm usually one of our top 2 clients, and I would feel that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody who's an empowerer of women. Yeah, it's just make sure that you're spending the money on the things that you value, not things you couldn't care less about.
I just had
And
this
you know what I
memory.
love about I'm so sorry, April. I was just going to say
Go
what
for
I
it.
love about your podcast here and what you've done, and just me being a part of this today, is that I'm not alone, and we
Yes.
feel like sometimes we are. And so just hearing you, Megan, talking about supporting small businesses, and then how you also, went out on your own. And I know April, she's big shoes to fill. So I just the mentoring that she's done with me, and just knowing that I'm not alone. I mean, that's part of my joy now. That's part of this abundance that we're talking about. And money then kind of comes, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing what you love and feeling good and probably being
I
appreciated for it as well.
Yeah, but also owning your worth during it. So this came up in our
Yeah.
3-day challenge today too. In my history, I made six figures at age 25 because I went to work for a large law firm, right? And I love my life. I love my lifestyle. Like that made me happy then. Now, I wouldn't love that lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? But like at the time, it was great, and I won't tell the whole story, but basically ended up marrying an Italian, moving to Italy, law degrees no good. I can't make any money over there, which was a whole interesting experience. So when we moved back to the US and I got a law job, I hadn't worked for 2 or 3 years. So I knew I could, and I was going to a smaller city. I was going to New Orleans instead of Atlanta. So I kind of, logically knew, okay, I'm not going to be able to ask for the same salary I left. So I started 15% less. But I was like, I sure as heck am not staying here. So I'm going to show up and bring value to my clients and bring value to the firm every day. And, end of the year, they gave me a 15% bonus. So I ended up making the
Wow.
same amount of money. Yeah, it's huge. And a 15% raise. So there was no way I could have said, hey, my boss is going to give me a 15% bonus, right? I didn't know that. But I did know my value and I did know what I brought to the table. And I showed up every day and served it. And then I got paid for it. If you're in a situation where you don't feel that's happening, you might want to consider if you're in the right
Okay.
place. I mean, just to be honest, and we're not
Exactly.
talking about entitlement culture, but you have to know the value you bring to the table and are you being compensated for it?
You just described basically my time in the corporate financial world till today, and I'm thriving, and it's because I'm in an environment that it's cultivating that let me grow, and it's so critical, absolutely. But yeah, but I knew how good I was, I knew my worth, and I was like, I'm out of here. Y'all don't see it, so I'll, kind of reassess, but
So if you're
definitely get
listening,
yourself in that type of environment.
yeah, I agree. If you're listening right now, if you're an entrepreneur, if you work in corporate, if you work for a smaller company, what my tip would be is to challenge yourself. Spend some time. I personally am not a big journaler, so I hate to tell people to go journal because you should practice what you preach. But some people love journaling. I love just talking out loud, going for a walk, thinking about things. I'll do voice notes to myself on my phone. But really, spend some time reflecting on the value you bring to the table and have your list so that you know what you're bringing to the table. Because we don't stop to take time to reflect on our wins and our strengths. Your strengths you currently have, not the ones you're looking to develop or develop in the future. And when you do this, it's such a boost to your confidence that it's much easier to ask what you're worth. And, like Megan says, have your data. This is data, right? I do this, I do this, I bring this to the table. In fact, it's funny, Karen, I don't think you know this, but the lady who does your social media attended one of my things, and she was just out of college, super cute, had no idea what
Yeah.
to charge y'all. And so she was like, April, I need to make more money, blah, blah, blah. So I coached her through it. And then she went and I coached her through going back and she got a
I love it.
40% raise off what she was making, but she went and
See?
made the case for what she was doing. And I mean, no one
Right.
gave it to her. She earned it, but I coached her through that. And she was so happy. But these are valuable skills that you want to hone. It's kind of like setting boundaries. I mean, talking about setting boundaries is kind of like talking about taxes. No one wants to talk about it, right? It's painful.
Right,
But when
right.
you hone the skill set to set good boundaries, it becomes easier. Not immediately, but over time. So, my tip
And you do
is
have
that
to
you can learn
ask, right?
abundance. Yes.
Don't be afraid to ask. That's the first. And then, like you said, then be able to go in there and be able to say, this is what I am worth, and I know it.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, women do tend to, and I think, venues like this, to get guide, to be able to go in there for that, whether it's the interview or the annual review or what have you, and ask and not feel guilty.
Yeah, and the a lot of clients that I have are more socially minded. So they want to be really good employers. And so another metric that we'll watch is employee productivity. So that I have business owners that are so sweet. They really want to reward their employees, but we need to make sure that they're performing, performing. And so proactively, if you're an employer or you're branching out on your own and you've experienced corporate trauma, know that you can be an incredibly empathetic business owner and build a company that you would have liked to work for when you were 20 years old. So that is possible, and that's another why that you can have to kind of help you get through those darker times.
I love
like that.
And I also like that you have a metric for looking at productivity, because sometimes we conscious business owners
It depends on the industry.
Well, no, but sometimes, I mean, I've been an overgiver in the past, and I paid people probably more than they were bringing to the table, right? And it in essence hurts your company and hurts everyone else, not just you. So, like, having something to base that on and be fair about it, I really love that idea, because it kind of, keeps us in boundaries too. So we're not just throwing around money and being irresponsible with how we compensate people, but proactively compensating what they're worth or more. I always believe in paying slightly above market average, because, why be in there duking it out with everyone? It's like, okay, I think you're worth more. Let's do this. Now they're going to have to earn the next raise,
value,
right?
Well, the value that you can bring, especially, and I'm saying this as a leader of departments in corporate America, the value system of the younger generation, the Gen Zs, the Gen Alphas, is more around freedom and work-life balance. So if you're a small business owner, even if you're not paying like what a larger corporation may pay, but you're giving them flexibility and benefits of, working from home or being able to take a day off without a doctor's note if the kid is sick, you're going to attract talent. And so it's not just about money with those younger generations, and that is something that the smaller businesses have an edge on. They could provide over a large. So you can get better talent, with the flexibility.
Yep. I love that. All right, ladies. Well, it's almost time for us to wrap up. But what's interesting is I talk about, this came up too in our 30-day challenge, about abundance being a feminine trait, right? So Karen, here's what I'd like to explain. When you were a lobbyist, you were in the hustle and grind culture. That's a very masculine way of earning money, right? And so what we've learned is when we bring value, when we serve, when we show up for people, we get paid that. So we're just receiving the reward, which is the feminine way of getting paid. So I really, if you're listening, think about how you can be open to receiving more and not so focused on that end outcome. Because it's really, I had someone call me the other day and say, hey, can you do this 2-day event for me? And it came out of the blue that they want me to MC and interview people for 2 days. Well, one, it sounds like a freaking fun as heck event that I'm excited to be part of. And two, it's going to be a nice paycheck, right? So I get to just go be me and get paid for it. So when you start receiving and opening up, you just don't understand where these things are coming from. Just trust you're going to get paid your worth, but you have to understand your worth. So I do want to kind of bring us home and honor everyone's time. But before we wrap up, I always like to ask your first time on the show, when do you feel you're most feminine? Because we're all about, being able to go between masculine and feminine energy in the Vixen Gathering and not ignoring our feminine essence. So when do you feel most in your feminine energy?
That is an interesting question.
I feel the most feminine when I'm helping another woman live her dream. Because, we've all been through a lot with the way that society is structured, and to see somebody living their dream and being the one that encourages them to do so and giving them the information they need to do that, that makes me feel like I'm giving back.
I
Yeah.
love it.
I would definitely have to say it's in the service, right? In the servicing
Yeah.
side, kind of a nurturing, embracing of just helping folks for sure. And definitely, I like clothes, right? I mean, that's one of my
Me
things that
too.
right? I mean, when I put on my heels, that's definitely, that keeps me very feminine. I would say that is the other thing there, in the sense that when you're in the workforce with folks living with women, be yourself. Don't be afraid to be in that masculine environment and be feminine. It's powerful, actually. Use it.
I agree. So, next question is, what color is your feminine energy?
I'm gonna say pink.
I was gonna say I wore it because it keep me my pink and purple
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah, magenta is mine, so a little bit more like the color of your hair, Megan. Like the fuchsia, but a little bit more purple. That's mine, so that's my power. I love it. I already knew the answer before you
Yeah.
told me that, but I love asking that question. I've gotten everything from light pink to black, so I always like to hear. Because here's the bottom line: we women are multifaceted. We're so unique and beautiful in our way, and really just appreciate who you are and what you bring to the table, and really, through abundance and other mechanisms,
Yeah.
work to be your own cheerleader. You should be your biggest cheerleader, and when you come from that place, you serve others better, you show up in love, you show up in the world better, and the world needs more feminine energy now, so let's bring it, and let's bring more love. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today to my amazing guests. Oh, by the way, all episodes are now being posted on YouTube as well as Apple and Spotify. So check it out, and we'll have some other features showing up in YouTube, little snippets of me coaching, etc. So if you want to get more of the Vixen voice, check us out on YouTube. And Megan and Karen, if you'd like to get more of them, check it out in the show notes. Megan has a very kind offer. Check it out where she can walk you through. Megan, do you want to tell us about your offer quickly?
Yes, no matter where you're at, if you're not ready to hire an outsourced CFO, you can fill out the form and get access to a mini course that helps you understand a little bit more about bookkeeping and taxes. But if you're at that multiple 6-7 figure and above level and you need another set of eyes on your business, it'll give you a link to provide for me to have a call with you for free. Complimentary.
Awesome. Do a little audit. I love that. Very nice.
Yes.
And Karen is at Roberts Wealth Management. So if you'd like a bright, beautiful financial advisor leading your financial team, by the way, they do operate as a team, the all-star team.
Yes.
And again, my brother is her boss,
Yes.
so I will disclose that. But Roberts Wealth Management has physical locations from Pensacola, Florida to Houston, Texas, 3 offices around Houston, but they serve clients nationwide virtually. So
We
again,
do, and feel free to call, right? And we'll do a consultation as well. So.
I love it. Awesome. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I know that it's both of your first times on a podcast, so I'm so honored that you came here with me. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope everyone listening enjoyed it. And just remember, how can you show up in more love today so that you make the world a better place? Have a great one. Thank you.